It's time someone talks about this because this really is interesting to me at least. Lando Norris, when he entered the sport, was seen in high regards. He was challenging George Russell for the F2 title and seemed to be a cool guy since he got along well with everyone and was well loved by all the media factions. You know how crazy that is, by the way, to be loved by all or most of the F1 media, not to mention the fan bases as well? You had Merc fans, Ferrari fans, Red Bull fans just loving the guy and hoping he would race for them one day. Then we all closed our eyes and went to sleep, and now it's 2024 and this guy is being targeted by quite literally every single fan base in F1, and the F1 media are starting to turn on him too, even the British media. Okay, so clearly something happened in those 5 years that turned him from F1 sweetheart to F1 shit rag. So I made it my mission to look at his career as a whole, including statements made before, and find out when did he become so unlikable, or if he was always like this and we were just too blind to see it. These claims of his unlikability, if that's even a word, have not been helped by his behavior this season. Case in point, literally this past weekend in Brazil, which may have been some of the worst of it so far. So let us find out when this shift in him happened. But before we go any further, don't forget to join the Discord where we have lots of fun chats about motorsport and everything else. So subscribe if you are new if you want to see a duck slander yet another driver. So enough yapping and let us find out what went wrong for Lando Norris. Let us start in 2018, which is the year most people started to know his name. He was in F2 this year and he would be mighty impressive, if a little overambitious at times, but this sort of racing got him many eyes and many people already started saying he would be a future world champion. But despite these claims, he lost out to George Russell on the F2 title, who quite frankly did much better than Lando standings aside. But like I said, it's not like Lando did badly. So when Fernando Alonso finally admitted nothing was going to happen with McLaren, he left to do other things outside of F1, which freed up a spot at McLaren, which was coincidentally enough Lando's driver academy. So of course he was signed off for 2019, and his teammate would be Carlos Sainz after Stoffel van Dorn was led out back to the McLaren motorhome and was swiftly discarded of, let's just say that. Anyways, Carlos Sainz was seen as a really underrated driver, which would be a good benchmark for Lando, and typically what would happen in these sort of scenarios would be rookie teammate either decimates experienced teammate or vice versa. However, instead, they became best buds and raced together beautifully. This would start the perception of Lando being a, how do you say it, Reddit wholesome big chungus Keanu Reeves I love you 3000 guy, and you know, fans would love him for this. At this time, he also gained a notable internet presence since he managed his own social media and even left YouTube comments on some F1 highlights here and there, and this only fueled the love people had for him. This love would especially be from young teenagers around his age, since most teens acted in the manner that Lando did, which was goofy and a bit childish. This personality also made him real popular with the other drivers, since with almost every driver he interacted with, there was always this little brother big brother dynamic, and it was funny. However, please keep what I just said in mind. Anyways, after some more goofing around in 2019, Lando would finish 11th in the standings, and the general consensus was he would become a great in the sport due to his lovable personality and even better driving. But then we enter 2020. This year would see some changes in it. For example, his internet presence was probably the biggest it has been, since with everyone inside due to the thing that rhymes with Verona Kyra's pandemic, Lando started live streaming on Twitch where he'd goof around in the F1 game and other video games. And even when the 2020 season got underway, he still found time for streaming, so great, he could interact with fans while staying humble on the racetrack. But no, my friend, the tides have shifted. McLaren in 2020 were upper midfield, and in a season where Albon was blinded by his tears and Ferrari were crawling out of hell, this meant that as long as Lewis, Valtteri, or Max retired in the race, a podium was possible for these midfield teams. And luckily for Norris, the very first race saw this happen, since Max DNF'd with engine issues and Lewis was given a penalty after, according to him, Albon turned in on him. So Lando now had a chance for the podium, and he took it. Everyone was happy for him and expected more podiums, but instead of podiums, we saw the beginning of the end. You know what they say about drugs? You get one little taste and then you just want more and more and more. Lando got a podium and now he wants more and more and more. And this is normal. However, he started to become a little too full of himself, since he started thinking that not only can he win, but he should win. This thinking reached its peak in Portugal, since after Lewis had just broke the record for the most wins in F1, Lando said he has a car that should win every race and he only has to beat one or two people sometimes. Keep this quote in mind, but anyways, he did meet flack for this and started to lose fans for this, since this was very disrespectful to say, but alas, Lando had potential, so let's see if he could back it up. Anyways, 2020 would end and he would only take home that one podium, but he did show some good potential. So now 2021, and here the fan base is split in two. For context, Sainz left McLaren to join Ferrari, so with one spot open, Fat Brown nabs up Daniel Ricciardo, and the expectation from everyone is, oh, Daniel's gonna humble Lando and put him back down to earth. But as we all know, it was the literal opposite. Daniel could never work that McLaren car and was swiftly disposed of by Lando, and Lando even said that he has no sympathy for him, that he really shouldn't because it's not his problem. Now, even though teammates are rivals, teammates are still expected by teams to share data with each other, so the team can always maximize results, but Lando didn't, and this starts to build his ever-exposing ego. And this ego is later fueled more by Lando just being really impressive in that car, since he grabbed up podiums in the first half of the season like it was nothing, and this made him start thinking that he is one of the best on the grid. Now, I am not denying that, since he certainly was, but he started to get too overambitious by sneak dissing drivers left and right, and sometimes driving pretty stupidly by forcing everyone off the road and dive bombing. Russia, however, would truly humble not only him, but everyone who supported him. Russia would be the start of Lando bottling, since he got pole in tricky conditions, and in the race, he looked set to win. However, rain started to pour, and instead of wanting to pit for inters, he wanted to tough it out at the end of the race. And fair play, it's only like 5 or more laps, but then it starts really pissing down, and Lando insists that it's fine, and 3 seconds later, he's in the barrier. This seemingly destroyed him, since for the rest of the season he was mid, but luckily for him, 2022 is a clean slate since its new regulations. So how did he do? Not much better. To be fair, that McLaren car was pretty bad, and even though he took home one podium, not much would happen in the season. However, he did make a big decision that year. He announced that he would stop being on social media as often, since he wants to focus on only racing and his mental health. So great, surely he goes back down to earth and can start driving where his mouth is. But nope. He makes further comments on how most people are undeserving winners due to having the best car on the grid. If only he could see the irony in that. And these comments were further fueled in 2023, where he straight up started to lose it. He started saying that if Lewis joined McLaren in 2023, Lewis wouldn't be as good as he is, and how McLaren in 2007 were championship contenders, so it made Lewis look better than he was. And like, my guy, chill. And when McLaren rocked up in the second half of 2023 with the second fastest car, he started saying how he will beat Max Verstappen given the opportunity. So then, the opportunity came. We are now in the present. Lando entering 2024 still had many supporters who found him endearing and lovable, and 2024 would be a big testing ground to see if this guy is fraudulent or not, due to McLaren potentially being the fastest team. Well, at first they weren't, they were barely faster than Mercedes, but then Miami came. Context, Lando is being spat on by the F1 community, since this guy and his insufferable comments about undeserving winners were ironic, considering Lando had a total of 0 wins himself, and this gave him the nickname of No Wins. I still love that name, by the way. Anyways, heading into Miami, McLaren brought upgrades that launched them into the fastest car, or at least tied with Red Bull. So, can he win? Well, after playing the long game and praying for a safety car, guess what? Lando got it, which gave him a free stop under yellow and kept him in the lead. And after the car pulled in, Lando would gap Max, since of all things to pick up damage from, Max got damage from running over a cone. And eventually, he did it. Lando won for the first time in F1, and everyone was happy for him. But then, Lando made sure we stopped. In his victory radio, he mentioned and made fun of the No Wins nickname, and okay, fair play, but an F1 driver immediately thought of negative social media comments after achieving a lifelong dream? I don't know, it seems kinda insecure from me, but we move. Anyways, not only does he have a car to win, but he genuinely has a car that can push for the title, since the Red Bull is falling off a cliff, and Ferrari. So Lando, you have what you want now. Back up your words about how Lewis was undeserving in the best car. Back up your words about you being second best to Max. Back up your rising ego. And what did he do? Embarrass himself. Canada and Spain would be races where the McLaren was the fastest car or tied with fastest. And Lando had pace. He should have won, but keyword is should have. In Canada, Lando got unlucky with the timing of the safety car, and McLaren kind of messed him up, so fair play. But in Spain, come on now. He started on pole, and instead of defending himself by keeping his line and sending it into turn 1, he closes in on Max, which only slows them both down and allows Russell to take the lead. Max will later win that race after Lando was just too slow to catch up, and now he is starting to become rattled. The F1 community is making fun of him more and more, and with Lando clearly noticing the hate comments, he has to prove something in Austria. So did he? Of course he didn't. In the sprint race, he sends out on Max, which only allows Max and Piastri through, and in the race, he was fed up being behind Max, so he starts sending it in an effort to push Max away. But this is Max we're talking about. Lando, who sees a car coming his way, decided, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing, and decides to not move for the impeding car, which obviously led to the crash and Lando losing more points to Max. So this guy not only shit talks people who have the best car, but now also proves his own point wrong of how the best car wins races and the drivers are only lucky to be there. And then we have his attitude. In Hungary, Lewis said to Lando how quick their car is, and instead of Lando being like, yeah, the engineers are so great or something like that, Lando goes off on Lewis saying, you had the best car 7 years ago and you're winning, now it's my turn. What? Then in Zandvoort, he would win again, and instead of being like, thank you guys so much, let's push harder and catch Max and Red Bull up, he says, simply lovely on Max's home turf. My guy, you bottle more than a drunk alcoholic dad. You cannot have this sort of audacity. Then there's things like team orders and how he kind of needs them sometimes to stay ahead of Oscar, and even more bottling like in Singapore or in Brazil, where after he bottles pole yet again and gets stomped on by Max, who sees the title for himself, he says he won through luck, not talent. Talent is winning from 17th in the rain and overtaking drivers like they are on 0% AI. Luck is playing a pit gamble and being saved by your nearest rival having floor damage. You of all people should see that irony. So Lando is not only insufferable, but a man who can't back up his own words. Poetic justice. So what exactly made him unlikable? Well, it's obvious, his ego. For some reason, his ego started to sprout up out of nowhere, which made him believe that others around him are not built like that and only he is. Plus, he lets social media get to him and thinks that proving a point against a Twitter user stands for something. Plus, he bottles all the time and is just not built for the words he is spewing out. I think the shift in personality started in 2020, where he first started to get a hint of glory, and ever since then, it just gets worse and worse every year until it hit its peak this year. But where did this ego come from? Surely one little podium doesn't cause an entire shift in personality. And you are right. What if I were to tell you Lando has always been egotistical, and that little podium simply unchained it and made him realize that he is not some little brother or some childish person, and he needs to prove a point to people. Ego is not something that comes up after one little achievement and can be eradicated through therapy. Ego is in essence yourself. We become ourselves throughout our lives, and our personality is dictated through our environment. So when a child grows up in nepotism and a worry-free world, the child is likely to feel very entitled and ignorant when they become an adult. So that is why, despite his ego, I don't dislike Lando as a person, and you shouldn't either. Is he very annoying on and off the track? Yes, but it's not like he's done truly anything horrible. And with the way people hate on him now, you would think he blew up a hospital or something. And we have to remember, he couldn't really do anything to change his environment as a kid. And the truth is, if we grew up in his environment, most of us would be exactly like him. And I think Lando knows this flaw of himself too. Lando is a big advocate for mental health, since he does struggle with that, since he is very self-critical of himself due to him not having realistic standards. And he also advocates through various organizations and knows quite personally how hatred from outside sources can affect someone. And he simply wants to try his best to make sure kids aren't like that, or rather, like him. So I truly believe that Lando knows he is egotistical. Lando knows he can't back up his words. That's why he seems very defensive and insecure. But truth is, he can't change that, since to change that aspect would be to change his entire childhood, which is obviously impossible. Which is why I think despite his ego and annoying behavior, we should calm down on the hate against him, since let's be real, he is not the only driver who behaves this way, yet he receives the most hate for it. So that is how Lando went from the most liked driver to the least liked driver. To be honest, part of me is very sympathetic towards him, since like I said, he can't change his childhood, and this ego of his very likely comes from there. Nepo babies are always going to be insufferable. Hell, we've seen it in the sport many times, but a child never chooses where they grow up in, and thus, an adult can never change their personality, which is a consequence from their childhood. Or maybe everything I said is complete bullshit and Lando really is egotistical through his own doing, and in that case, well, wasting my time for nothing. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the flock for their continued support of me, and if you want cool perks as well as just helping me out with my journey, make sure to join it. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe since that would greatly help me out, and make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of Lando, and as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.